Wii Wonders!
Welcome, wonderful watchers, to Wii Wonders, a Wii game review series by me, Souldin of the Grin Brothers. This episode will cover the Wii game Dragon Blade: Wrath of Fire, a hack and slash game developed by Landho and published by D3 Publisher. Let's begin playing then. It's Waggle time!
Story time!
Dragon Blade's plot is a combination of two stories, one unique and one more typical of a fantasy RPG. Long ago, the fire dragon, Valthorion, stepped in to stop the wars of men. He established an era of peace and chose 7 noblemen to reign over this hopeful era. In interfering with mankind, Valthorion had broken a sacred code amongst dragons, and his dragon brethren soon tricked his noble followers. Teamed up with the Dark Dragons, the 7 appointed kings slayed Valthorion, taking his powers and body parts alike. In this moment, King Jandril realised that they had been tricked, and so fled from the Dark Dragons, with the sword hilt containing Valthorion's soul. He hoped to one day revive the Fire Dragon, but as his corrupted and monstrous fellow kings ravaged the lands, he grew old and died. The task to bring back Valthorion and save the land would be left to King Jandril's descendants. That brings us to Dal. He's having cool fire sword wielding dreams and is about to get married. Then his village gets attacked, and his fiancée is killed. Now with the fiery blade that is Valthorion, one can communicate and guide him. Dal sets off to unleash his fiery wrath on Vormanax and restore Valthorion. And that is where Dal's story ends. He may be the one storming across sunny beaches and slashing his way through poisonous jungles, but he doesn't get a speaking role after this intro. When marching up to the mutated royalty or giant dragons, it's Valthorion one they address. It makes sense as Valthorion is the guy they are familiar with, and the brief dialogue exchanges allow for insight into the mini and major bosses you encounter. The 3-headed Norgeloth is amusing, and Valthorion proves to be both a deep and sweet character. Aww. Valthorion's such a good character, and I've barely known him! It just would have been nice to have more input from Dal, rather than just jumping into whirlpools without objection because Valthorion told him to.
Instruction time!
The Wii Remote is known as a sword in dragon terms, and that is how it's used in this hack and slash adventure. Every attack is decided by your Wii Remote's up, down, left, right and thrusting motions, with Dal's sword swings in-game mimicking the general direction. They say that the mastering their potential to weave into one another is the key to effective combat, but even a misread input can be handy in most situations. These swings continue to be your attack input, whether you be airborne from jumping with the Z button or using one of the many dragon abilities that are activated with the D-pad. There are a couple of exceptions, such as how the dragon double arm also involves swinging the nunchuck to attack, but it is only a couple. The various buttons do have functions, such as the couple that have already been mentioned, along with the 1 button to toggle the minimap mode, and the A button to defend. The remote's B button locks onto an enemy, and is then used in combination with the nunchuck's C button, which allows you to switch which enemies you've locked onto. Very reminiscent of Ocarina of Time's Z targeting. You'll be unsurprised to learn that the nunchuck's control stick moves Dal, with a tap of the guarding A button having the swordsman dodge roll. You'll also eventually unlock a double jump for Dal, which is unsurprisingly performed by tapping the jumping Z button again when airborne. Fear not if your Wii Remote swings feel too sensitive or not sensitive enough at first, as this 2007 release comes with the sensitivity options for both your Wii Remote and your nunchuck. It even presents on screen the direction of your swing in the control settings, so you can adjust as accurately as possible. Such a feature is hugely appreciated, and it only took a couple minutes to find the right level of sensitivity for me. The controls strike a strong balance of simple execution and fun motions that make sword swings satisfying. The C button lock-on change is often unresponsive, but the other inputs are swift with switches between your dragon abilities being particularly smooth, even if it may not have been the ability you had intended to press on the D-pad with your big thumb.
Action time!
Dragon Blade may be a linear level-based hack and slash with straightforward motion inputs, but there is actually plenty of nuance to the gameplay. You select your level and follow the minimap markers to head to the end of the level. Preventing you from doing this are waves of enemies, be they charging pig soldiers, spell-casting bird mages, or adorable spiders. They come in a good variety, but are also maintained in appearance from start to finish, with the game believing that level 3 spiders will prove just as dangerous if they throw a ton more at you at level 19. And they aren't wrong. The game manages to cram a ton of enemies on screen at once, and in different shapes and sizes. This proves tricky because of the game's aforementioned nuance. Simply striking the horde of enemies with your sword will only get you so far, as they are often many and they can have super armor on their attacks. You can deal more damage to lizardmen foes and the like by striking them as they are about to attack, sometimes even interrupting them. This is a counter-attack, and not your only means of interrupting enemies, as you also have the parry option. If you perfectly synchronize your defend with an enemy's attack, you parry, stopping their assault and even earning a blue dragon scale to replenish some health. It's a hard task to consistently pull off though, as whilst you can get into a rhythm of parrying a lone polar bear, a pack of wolves with different lunge times or trying to time things as archers snipe you is a different story. Perfect parries in the heat of the moment prove satisfying, whether it be farming for health, consistently avoiding damage when clashing with a boss, or blocking an off-screen attack. I didn't even see him and I countered that. Awesome! You need crowd control to deal with the enemies, one you'll often be trapped in a room or magical barrier with, and the dragon abilities provide just that. A dragon tail sweeps enemies off their feet as a wicked whip, and bulky dragon claws hurl groups into the sky with an erupting uppercut. Using these dragon powers uses up Dao's fire energy, and you'll need to gather up red dragon scales to restore it. You can gather these from smashing pots and burning hay piles, but you also have the option to stab attack enemies if you need them during a fight. The thrust motion stab is a good opening move and is especially handy against the giant draconic bosses with massive health bars, but its slow speed and delay afterwards leaves you vulnerable. Speaking of bosses, you have two kinds, the corrupted body part thieving kings that serve as mini bosses at the end of certain levels, and the towering dark dragons ranging from kelpies, hydras and burrowing tortoises, I think. To defeat these dragon-powered adversaries, you'll need to destroy their elemental core, multiple in the case of the dragons, and to do that you'll need to first deplete their health bars, multiple again in the case of the dragons. The kings are like standard enemies, but with more health, more moves, and plenty of super armor. Some of the later enemies even carry over a few of the attacks with repurposed models and animations. They may take a while to beat, but they are one-on-one affairs and can be parried like other enemies. Their fast attacks that hit hard can be a challenge to time against, but defeat them and you're rewarded with new dragon abilities. The dragons are of course giant non-humanoid opponents, with dedicated levels and spacious arenas to take them on in. The challenge comes in the form of their changing attack patterns across multiple health bars, along with frequent movement outside of your lock-on's range. You'll need to weave past their wide-range blows and nip at them in between moments, to which your dragon abilities will help immensely in diminishing those health bars. On their last moment occurs a core break attack chance, a quick time event involving fun motion control prompts and a stylish end. If you fail, the boss will recover a quarter of their health bar, which I feel is quite forgiving. The whole game is fairly forgiving actually, with plenty of checkpoints and 5 continues per checkpoint. Aside from hacking and slashing, there isn't much else to this game. Flipping switches with tail whips and head projectiles are merely means to progress, and what branching paths exist usually leads to traps. Occasionally you may break a wall down to retrieve a defense increasing armor sphere, or stumble upon a power-up monument to stab, but it doesn't take much wandering or thinking to discover these. The game does keep track of how quickly you complete a level, hits sustained, enemies killed, armor shards found, and your acts of vandalism in destroying objects, but these are purely a scorekeeping thing. No rewards aside from satisfaction here. I don't think there is much to say about the game visually, but it runs smooth, the fire effects look good, and there's a consistent blend of Chinese and medieval theme despite the shifts from snowy mountain levels to jungle ruins. The music isn't memorable, but it is clear with booming sound effects. What stands out more is Valvorian's voice acting, a rare treat in the opening and ending, with the Fire Dragon's words brimming with both wisdom and emotion. He's such a great character, and his introductory narration is a splendid first impression.
And all the while, Vorminex and his dark disciples crushed hope wherever they found it. Entire lands were ravaged. Those men who willingly served him, they became physically the monsters they were, infesting the world further with their own evil.
I love his voice acting.
Yes,
it's amazing the amount of emphasis he puts on words.
All but given up hope. But
Ending time.
Waggle time is over, and the 2 questions left to answer are as follows. What are my overall thoughts on this game, and who do I recommend this game for? Getting straight to the point, Dragon Blade is fun. It's simple to pick up and play, yet has enough complexity in its combat and enemy types to keep things engaging. Perhaps repetitive with another enemy wave approaching, but the continuous challenge keeps it exciting. The lock-on could be a lot better though. As for its story, I wish there was more of it, which is both a critique and a compliment. They establish an intriguing fantasy world with smooth transition from one thematically fitting yet distinctive environment to the next. As for who I would recommend this game for, it'd be those desiring a straightforward game of pure action. Past the narrated intro and first level, story only pops up in brief moments of dialogue, typically from the bosses, so there is little interruption to the hack and slash gameplay. You may not be rewarded for enemies and objects slain, but it's still a metric that is tracked, thus appealing to high score earners and competitors. I would also suggest this game for younger and inexperienced gamers, both for its forgiveness towards failure and the cheat codes available. Holding Z and 2 or C and 2 buttons when selecting a new game can grant you an easy and hard mode respectively. Holding Z and pressing plus on the stage select menu allows you to then input various Wii Remote and nunchuck motions to gain access to dragon abilities early. Given how late you receive some of these, the early access opportunity is much welcomed. Whether you choose to play the Wii wonder that is Dragon Blade Wrath of Fire is up to you, but either way I hope you enjoyed this review and thank you for watching. Landhau, a developer I've heard very little about. They believe they use like Sturby Stallion games, and I think they did some Just Dance games. This was pretty much their first big project from where, it's like one where they're actually named, because I think they've worked on previous games. Oh, they also worked on Crimson Skies, the spiritual successor to Panzer Dragoon, that Xbox One sort of like early game or launch title. They like dragons. And horses, which I guess are kind of like dragons.
Thank you for watching. Cheerio.